They live in Kenya. I mean, um, like the little boy, for example, it was crazy because they lost him for a certain period of time. We had cast him, and then, I mean, it's really not like, Western conditions of, I mean, obviously there's no agent, you're talking to the parents, you have to, and actually I'm talking to a local person in Kenya who's talking to a translator who's talking to the parents. Then at some point, he was like part of some sort of nomadic group. And at some point after we had decided for him, that nomadic group moved on, and then they lost him. And we were like, what? I mean, it was like, what? And then it took the casting, the local Kenyan casting had to go, and she eventually found him.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Kingdom Dreams podcast, The Making of Stories. Today, my guests are Cassandra Han and Lorenzo Viti. They're casting directors who have worked on several films, but today they are here to talk about a very special film that came out last year, premiered at Tribeca, premiered at TIFF. It's called Samia, based on a true story of an athlete and how she goes through struggles to get to where she wants to be in life. It was a lovely conversation. We talked about the casting process, the challenges they faced casting Samia, looking for actors everywhere, and how they were able to help bring the story of Samia to life. Because as you know it, if you have a great script and you have great casting, more or less everything else sort of falls into place as far as a good film or great film is concerned. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Cassandra and Lorenzo for Samia. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. I actually had the
Of course.
pleasure of just finishing Samia right now. Really,
Oh,
really liked the film. I actually didn't know much about the story in terms of how the real story went down, and even at the last minute, I was expecting the film to go in one direction, but it didn't. So, but a really well done film, and most of it, I mean, obviously it's a great script, a great story, but the casting that you guys did was phenomenal. The
it's
actors
so
were amazing.
insane because literally there wasn't I mean, there was maybe one or two that had done like a short, but pretty much like feature film on-screen debut for many, and feature debut, or I can't remember if any, like who has done, like
The
somebody
lead
had done. No,
debuted
no, no, never done anything. Yeah, exactly.
first
And
time.
actually, funnily, the girl who played the best friend, Lorenzo did the auditions with her in Rome, and she thought she was going to a catering interview, and she continued to think that until she was like, she was like,
Didn't
why
speak
are
any
they giving
English,
me?
was
Yeah,
her casting
she's like, she's
came
like,
on it.
why are they giving me these things to read? And then she's like, okay, but she thought it was a catering job the entire time, and then she was like, oh, then she could finally understand it was a film, but it took her a really long time. I love that. It's very funny. So
That's
catering,
awesome.
casting, it's all very, yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
So
That's
yeah.
awesome. I'll get to Samia and casting in a bit. I just kind of want to go back to, in the line of business that you guys are in, casting is a very important aspect of film. Everything is, but it can make or break the film, even if the script is great. How did you guys get into that world? Was it always casting, or was it something else in the film world and it kind of deviated to casting? If you can run that story, each one of you, whoever wants
Yeah.
to start first.
You go first.
Lorenzo, no, you want to go first? So I worked for a Broadway producer in the very, very early 90s. And just randomly, there was a show called Love Letters, which was like they had a Broadway show, and then they had like five or six licenses of the show and like tours, national tours. And they had a casting director, but like every week they needed like a new couple. And it's became a lot. And so then I just started working, just helping with that process. But at that time, it was like, just, you know, it was just sort of a side thing that I did at the producing, the producer's office. And then over time, when I started first working in film, I did extras for a movie with Sheila Jaffe and Georgianne Walken. They were the casting directors. And then I just kind of started working for them a bit as an assistant. And then I started getting hired to do it quite a bit, but I have to say it was really like a money gig for me because I had this theater company, like, we're doing this whole like Ethan Hawke and all these like young actors, and I had to like make money while that was going on. And so it was sort of just like a gig thing for me. And then that continued for a number of years. And then when I moved to Europe, I completely stopped for about 10 years, thinking I couldn't do it here. And then, but about 10 years ago, it sort of came back in the region of Italy that we lived in. They needed somebody to do casting, so I started, and then I brought Lorenzo along.
Nice, nice. Lorenzo, what's your version of the
Yeah,
story?
Yeah,
I'm actually originally
exactly.
an architect, trained architect, worked 15 years as an architect till 20 years ago, till I met Cassandra. And then, yeah, so 11 years ago, so 10, 11 years ago, in this region where there was a pretty big film fund in the Alps where a lot of Italian and German productions were shooting. We started first with some local roles for productions that were shooting there. And I was helping Cassandra with the casting, but then mainly doing like the extras, or for involved, I'm doing the extras for these movies that, in any case, those productions needed. And so that was a great experience for me also to start in it while looking over the shoulder of Cassandra. And yeah, so the 10 years of casting, we did also the extras for like, you happen to have living in a region like this, like Terrence Malick shooting there because he had to represent like a mountain, Austrian mountain story during the Second World War. So you get to work with someone like Terrence Malick, even if you are like in the Dolomites.
Right.
Casting. So the chances were quite a few to work on interesting projects, and more with Cassandra's background and experience. Of course, she could reach out and get more overview on projects they were actually maybe playing outside of South Tyrol until we decided, well, we also moved then outside as there's more visibility, we're more in contact, and we can continue working on Italian, German, mainly now German projects. And of course, Cassandra being American, a lot of international project shooting here to find maybe English-speaking roles. So it's pretty varied. That's how we got there.
Right. Casting is one of those things, when you do auditions, even for people who are very well established, sometimes they even have to go through auditions. It's just one of the processes.
Yeah, sure.
I end up seeing a lot of audition tapes from like 80s and 90s of popular films of who
Yeah.
got the role and who didn't. Sometimes it can be quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Too much, right? Like it's like you're literally get people coming in nonstop. How does that process go for you guys where sometimes might get so tired, not you as in anybody doing casting, that they may overlook somebody because of that regular number of auditions that you're taking place. What's the process of like that, and how do you overcome any kind of those obstacles where you don't overlook anyone as much as you try not to?
Um, I would say that actually the problem nowadays, and especially on the European market, is actually the opposite. It's like pushing to have more actors seen and to take into consideration, because what tends to happen is, I don't know, the broadcaster or the television station, especially in network television, like kind of German network television, it's very limited, the list of people that they want to see. And so I do a lot of my energy, and our energy is spent in trying to open up the field and trying to get kind of permission to, to try something really different, to open it up and to, to see a wider range of actors. Because it can be very show reel based. So it's like people decide who's going to audition based on the show reel, which I think is kind of dangerous because then it's like, oh, they play a banker on the show reel, so this is a lawyer, so they're perfect for it. So it's like it's often trying to, and it's actually been quite well received, I think, in Germany, in Europe in general, but the process is a little bit backwards. So instead of having the casting director go out and do sort of like a few rounds of exploratory casting and really try to, see who's right for it, see who's out for there, try some people that don't quite fit exactly in the box that you expect. And then you take the results of that to the director and to the team. And whereas in Europe, it's more common for the director and the team to discuss the actors based on their knowledge of them and the show reel. And then, you go into the casting process. So I had to kind of pitch it when I was first doing. I was like, I'm going to do some exploratory casting. What do you think about that? And it's gone over really well. And it's just, like sometimes you find somebody that was not at all what was written. And then I've even had them many times like change the script to fit that actor but you can't do that if you're deciding together as a group who to audition, because it doesn't happen. It's a very limited list. Sorry, long answer, but it's
No, that makes
complicated a
sense.
little bit.
But then going so deep and wide, then you have to end up very often watching 400 or 500 tapes, and then
Sure, of course, yeah, you do.
Focus.
I mean, for certain roles, I don't feel comfortable without auditioning several hundred. I mean, like we just did this movie, The Wait, with Ethan Hawke and Russell Crowe, and like for the little girl, she's really pivotal to the story, and I really had to see a lot of actors for that. But it was so clear the minute that character shows up on screen, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, yeah, she's it," she's perfect. So, so that's it's you get a sort of a sixth sense about it. Sometimes you think, okay, I have to research that more. And sometimes the person that you think before you go into the process is going to be perfect for it. They don't quite, just doesn't sit on them quite perfectly. So it's really like, I really, really try to do auditions as much as possible.
And has there been a time where, there was somebody who auditioned for a role for a film among the 500 or 200, whatever the number is, but they struck to you, but didn't fit the part. But then somehow that same person kind of came into memory years later, and they were set up another project. Has that ever occurred to you guys?
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. I just wanted the lead actor in this Paramount Plus series that we did, $1 billion in German and $1 trillion in English. He auditioned like a year before for another project, and he wasn't quite right for that role. But that tape was so good, and that's how he got the other role, was because of that, because of that process. And I said, okay, wow, he's perfect. And then we moved on, and then he did several auditions and he got it.
That's interesting. You must have seen Henry Thomas audition for E.T. On YouTube, right? I mean, that's an amazing audition, and he just got the role right there. And then Quentin Tarantino's story of for Inglourious Basterds, Christopher Waltz, how he almost, they said, if we're not going to find somebody who speaks all these languages, I'm not going to do it. And the next day, he showed up, who was struggling throughout his career, and then he won Oscars. I know he won one at least at the end. I know he got nominated twice.
Absolutely.
So again, like, that casting process, how much of a connection, I'm sure you do, but just for the audience, like, that you have with the director, how much of a back and forth, or with the producer, that you go, okay, who you're looking for, what kind of personality, what your character is about, and etc. What is that like, your relationship with the director / producer?
It's always really, really hand in hand, it's like, but you do get at a certain point, you get to and also that's why it's great to work with directors more than once, because it kind of takes a little bit of time to get to know their taste. But usually by a couple weeks into it, I know exactly what the director's going to like and what they're not going to like. It's like they very much like, there's an art house director I work with a lot, and he always wants this like slightly larger than life style, which is not super naturalistic. And the minute I see an audition, I can even tell the actor, what you did was great, but try to like make it more stylized, make it bigger, because that's like what he's looking for. Of course, it's project dependent, but it's also very much director dependent. So we're kind of like we're always like in touch constantly with the directors, and constantly getting feedback and talking to them and asking a lot of questions about this character, what kind of what trying to really understand what the director's looking for. That's a major part of it. And also the producer, of course, because the producers have certain, in some in European auteur, it's way more the director, but then like in television or in streaming, it's very, very much about what the producer is looking for. And sometimes it's both, and sometimes they disagree, sometimes they agree.
Right. Lorenzo, do you want to add anything to that?
That's good, thanks.
Okay. Great. That's what we're all supposed to do, right? In terms of Samia, so tell me, whoever wants to take a toll on this, or both of you, there was the little Samia, there was a grown-up Samia, and then her brother, her family, those were the main characters. Obviously, there were others. Just talking about that immediate circle, tell me the story of getting at least the younger and the older Samia, how it went through the hurdles that you guys faced, the challenges and all that.
Lorenzo did a ton of Samia, so I'll let you talk about that.
Well, I mean, starting from the older Samia, I mean, of course, we started looking at what actors are out there, and we were looking, well, mainly they're finding professional actors that some Somali actors with some experience. We looked into the UK. We had found like a great possible actors that could play that. But then, for example, there was also an interesting part of this casting process where we were getting into, some cultural differences and some cultural situations where, for example, this actress, she would not want to act without a scarf over her head. And so in the case of this role, because of the time, the 90s when Samia, and because of her character, Samia was running, was when she was, fighting also against the system that, I mean, it's still like pretty much like it was, but it was really pretty fundamentalist at the time. And so one part was like getting the freedom of running around as a girl, and it's also there. So it didn't work. And so we started looking. They had actually started the process like a few years ago. They tried. So there had been some phases we went through, and was nothing left. But there was one girl that had been taken consideration, I think the director even for the role, that could have still worked in terms of age. So she always stayed there in our mind. We kept looking, but in the end, she did end up, the one who played it and who had never done anything before, be really the right person to carry that role. So that's for
But we had to look at the diaspora all over. So we went to Finland, we looked in America, we looked in Canada. One of the actors came from Malaysia, Indonesia, I can't remember exactly where. And then they knew that they would shoot in Kenya. So the search for the children was, we had somebody on the ground, wonderful local casting director in Kenya. And she went around to all the schools and did like first set of tapes, of videotapes, of which was also very complicated, politically and everything, to get permission and et cetera. And then we also, we had trips to different, all different countries. It was really.
It was adventurous and sometimes also almost dangerous. We went to only to Finland, I think, and I went to Italy. In 3-4 cities. Then we had at a certain point found, like in Finland, actually, we found the role for the father of Samia, Somali actor who had just done something before, and he was touring to present this other movie. So he had experience, and he offered to help us also casting and finding on location. And he's from Somaliland, so the coast,
Djibouti,
where we came from. And so first he actually helped, I think, the director and an AD to go to Kenya when they were casting there for the kids, together with the casting director, the local casting director. And then we asked if he could go, since we couldn't go to Somalia, he offered to Somaliland to look. And so between him and Somaliland, and actually someone else we contacted in Djibouti, which is kind of the French part of Somalia. Somalia was like, had different kind of colonizations, like the French one, which was not relegated in Djibouti, which is the straightest, the Italians, and the main part of Somalia, and the Brits. So between Djibouti and we had them search and send us tapes and look, And actually, we ended up also searching in Somalia itself because the mother of the AD who was in contact with the production team for like some translation stuff, Somali woman who grew up there for the first 30 years before moving to Italy, actually went to visit family. So she contacted some relatives and kind of not too visibly, she managed to invite in a courtyard of these houses some kids, sending us tapes to visualize. And going back to that actor we had already practically chosen and cast for the role, when he was casting in Somaliland, he got in trouble. We were safely in Germany, but he got in trouble because he was contacting like people he knew because he comes from there. He's been living a long time in Finland. So he lost also a bit of the feeling of how things were going. So he put out through, I think, social media, like a casting call, and he got then threatened by the how do you call it, Cassie?
By the imams
The
and
imam,
also,
local
yeah,
imam, because they
exactly. Yeah.
thought they were looking
Yeah.
also for kids, that they were like kids trafficking kids with the excuse of a movie. So it was a whole very
It was
complicated.
very, very, very,
Needless to
very
say that we had to
difficult.
look
Yeah.
very deep in
Yeah.
complicated ways.
And
Mistakes
the whole
so yeah,
visa issue was super
visa issues.
complicated. And it was, yeah, even our lead actress couldn't come. She missed the premiere in Tribeca. Uh, she ended up coming a couple days later, but because she was blocked from having to come to New York. So it was
Somalis
the
don't have
whole
a
thing. Yeah, the whole thing was just so hard. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no, when it comes to Somalia, like a lot of people know Somalia, reference it as, with what happened in the 90s, the Black Hawk Down. There was a movie made
Yeah.
about it and everything. I'm sure there's a lot of movies that have come out from Somalia that don't necessarily reflect that part of Somalia. I mean, this did a great job in sort of humanizing that for the first good
Yeah.
part of the movie
Yeah.
until everything else kind of kicked in because that is the reality, in
Yeah.
some parts of it. Um, when you guys were finished casting, and the director and the producer or both, gave the green light, then as a casting director for the audience, what does your role become, or is that pretty much where it ends? Like, is there is there
It's
anything
it's
after that?
it's very different in Europe versus the US and UK because in the US and UK, and I do both kind of types, but or we do both kind of types, but the negotiation of the contracts is really like a huge task. And that's usually, yeah, we do that on international projects. So that's the whole, I mean, you're not going all the way to like the long form agreement, but you're doing all of the negotiations. So that can sometimes last a decent amount of time, and it can also be very strategic, and you have to like give good advice about what to, you know, what terms to accept and what not to. And it's of course those terms that are agreed upon will drastically affect the production going forward. So it's a very you know, difficult part of it. We hardly ever we went to set on that movie because we loved it, but it's usually we're kind of on to the next thing.
That's
And
what I was gonna
so,
ask. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So,
because
I
you kind
mean,
of lose touch with a
yeah,
project until maybe you go to the premiere, but then you're not really part
yeah,
of the family who started production and carried out the production. You're the ones who worked before.
yeah. And then sometimes it's a little weird, you know, because you feel like part of this huge family, but then they don't know you because you're not on set, you know, and
Yeah.
nobody, all the actors are like, well, of course I was born to play this role. So there was never a time in their minds, you know, when it wasn't like in question. Because, and then, you know, which is normal. And then they get into this big family thing and you're like not part of the family, which is a little tough. But anyway, it's for that particular movie, we loved the cast so much. We went down and visited, and you know, it was we didn't get to go to Kenya, of course. That would be really expensive to get there, but we went to
Most of the
Buea.
cast, Tribeca, were premiered, so it was nice to see them
Yeah, yeah, they were there, so that was
name
great.
it.
And it was I when I see those two little kids, I'm just like every time my eyes just tear up because I just it was so hard to find them, and I love them so much, and they're just I don't know, they for me they're just, I mean, the whole cast, but especially the kids, of course, they were very hard to find. So
Yeah. Has there been a time where, and this has happened obviously in Hollywood a lot, especially Back to the Future, where you guys casted somebody, the production starts, and then the director realizes that this is not the right person for whatever reason, and then you have to sort of go back and recast. And even though the production is like 10% isn't 20%. Have you guys come across of that story personally yet? No.
I have never, ever, ever had that happen. Um,
But do you
no,
hear
I
about
mean,
that happening more than often with other people, other
yeah, it's
casting?
pretty hard, I have to say. I mean, I gotta admit, some productions think that, I'm always really, really clear that once you make an offer and you start negotiating, it's like I mean, of course you could kind of get out of the negotiation maybe if
What do you
you
mean
ask for.
wrong that an actor seemed wrong then at the moment when they
You
start
mean
shooting?
to like recast, like to fire an
Yeah, yeah,
actor and recast?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In Back to the Future, it was I forget the guy's name. They filmed pretty much 40% of the film,
Uh-huh.
and then they had to bring in Michael J. Fox to reshoot
Yeah,
all of the
yeah,
scenes,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
That's a rare thing, but I'm just wondering if that has ever happened in your circle or in the people that you know in
yeah.
the casting agencies.
Knock on wood. Never. No.
I think
Mm-mm.
so.
No. Never had to recast like that. We had actually the one movie, the lead boy who was like 12 years old. The day before shooting, he was playing in the playground and he fell and he broke his leg.
Oh
So
God.
we had to, yeah, so we had to really cast that quickly. We had some other people who were helping and stuff. So, and insurance, they were like
Lead
on
kid
insurance hold for a few
week
days.
before
Yeah. So that was not even a
no
week before, it was
accident.
really the day before. So we had like 2 or 3 days to get a replacement, but that wasn't like he was fired or anything. He just, yeah, he hurt himself.
That's
Bad.
that's 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 bad luck for
Tragic.
the kid,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
looking forward to.
Um, are you in touch with these kids still? I mean, just because you said that, they're
Yes.
very.
Yeah, I mean
No, not really. I mean, they're not even,
the South Koreans, yeah.
oh, the South. Oh no,
Really,
those,
like
I think
two
you
or
meant are
three
you talking
young
about
leads
Samia? You
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
there.
about
yeah. We're talking
Samia?
about Simon. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Samia,
Only
yeah. No, they live in Kenya. I mean, um, like the little boy, for example, it was crazy because they lost him for a certain period of time. We had cast him, and then, I mean, it's really not like, Western conditions of, I mean, obviously there's no agent, you're talking to the parents, you have to, and actually I'm talking to a local person in Kenya who's talking to a translator who's talking to the parents. Do you know what I mean? So it's not
Yeah.
like and so we're like communicating back and forth and trying to, but then at some point he was like part of some sort of nomadic group. And at some point after we had decided for him, that nomadic group moved on and then they lost him. And we were like, what? I was like, what? And then it took the casting, the local Kenyan casting had to go and find, like, go to, she had to drive like across Kenya in a Jeep or something for like a whole day and then like find, and she eventually found him, but it was like really, really, really hard. So they were not like in close contact, with us at all. We're just like looking at the tapes and, and making decisions like that. But I mean, the director met with them in Kenya. So they had, that they brought them to Nairobi to have a meeting with her, but it was sort of a workshop. They did like a workshop with 5 or 6 kids per role. But yeah, this was not a huge budget film, so we couldn't be flown to Kenya because we had somebody
Yeah,
there
yeah,
locally.
yeah. No, the reason I asked was, the film Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks and
Yeah,
the
sure.
Somali
Yeah.
pirates. I remember reading about this 4 or 5 years ago. The guy who played the leading pirate,
Hmm.
and that how he was struggling to find work after
Yeah.
that. Like he just
yeah,
did
no,
not.
we're in touch
We were
with
in touch with him.
one actor actually, yeah, the one who the friend of the father of Samia. We cast him from I forget if it's Malaysia, I think. Malaysia. He had a
Mm,
Kenyan passport, and with the diaspora, he had some relatives outside of Malaysia, but not in Somalia. And he's trying, contact me, and we tried to find papers to get him a European passport, a German passport, try to come here. We've kind of figured out a way to hire him for something for a few months, but it never worked out. Stopped in
mm.
Kenya where he had a brother. But in his case,
Like,
didn't
yeah, in his
go to
case, I think
Somalia.
it's different. I mean, of course, there's a limited number of roles, and he's so identified, so it's kind of a typecasting type of
Yeah, it is.
situation. I
It
think of
is.
it. Yeah, it's the yeah, all actors, not every actor, but a lot of actors have that problem. So it's
Yeah, it's not even actors. I think it's also like directors, editors. Everybody gets pigeonholed,
yeah,
into
that's
doing
true.
one type of film. Obviously, actors is more visible because they're right in front of the camera,
Yes, that's true. No, but you're right
right?
about that. Yeah.
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 Um,
Yeah.
so,
That's absolutely.
how do you guys work as a couple? And I'm sure there has, been days where it's like this, and there's been days where it's like that. How do you deal with that, trying to keep your professional side separate from your personal? I mean, it's hard, but still you have to do it.
Lorenzo?
Is it other than a professional side? No, no, we find it's just that we both love movies. So even when we finish like a 12, 14-year-old day, then we still then maybe end up watching
14-year
three
long,
hours.
14-hour long. He said year long.
So an
Long
hour
days, yeah.
long, we
That's
still
probably your marriage duration, right? You're remembering that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 20 years.
we finish and still watch maybe 2, 3 hours of a movie. And then he's got this beamer, so it like feels a little bit not watching TV, but then we just love it. So always kind of it's always present in our
But
relationship.
but has there been a situation, and this is like a serious question, um, you know, we all are different, no matter if we're siblings or married to somebody else. Everybody has different opinions. Has there been a time where you guys sort of disputed? I mean, I know it's a director's call at the end of the day, but when you're trying to narrow down the list of people, has there been ever a time in any film where you guys disputed on a certain audition and how you sort of came over that, or has it been pretty much everything in synergy, when you before you send the list to the director or producer?
Usually it's also like Cassandra that looks maybe the final tapes and does the final decision. When we are at auditions together and we look at actors, then yeah, for sure we discuss actors, but then I think we usually trust Cassandra and kind of look at
Yeah, it's kind of our workload
experience.
is kind of divided up a little bit. Like there's like always a casting director and then there's
Uh,
like an associate. So he's doing usually associate work on the projects that I'm doing. He does his own projects as well. Like he just did a short film. He did really a lot on Samia. And I was relying on him a lot. Also, it's also gets broken up linguistically a little bit. So like Samia was an Italian production, okay, German director, but he was like going out into the kind of the field and doing so I was listening to him really a lot about actors because we're looking at the tapes or something, but then he was there with them shooting the video and stuff. So he had like a different perspective that I do. But normally,
But it's
yeah,
also not
I
efficient to double up on the choice. I mean, the choice, Cassandra makes the choice,
yeah,
divide up work, contacting the agents, that agents, or doing different tasks for a project. So it's not that
yeah.
we double down on the same thing, like whatever
Exactly,
choice.
exactly. And
Yeah.
Lorenzo's, I mean, I'm reasonably fluent in Italian and German, and I work all the time in both languages, but Lorenzo's like a native speaker basically of both. And so
mm.
very, very often he's doing a lot of that, talking to the agents and things that require linguistic skills, whereas I'm like staring at a screen most of the time,
So he gets the
right?
fun job, and you get to stay in
He
front of the
gets the
screen.
fun job. I just sit in front of a screen. Yeah, exactly.
Um, Without naming any names or anything, has there been a situation in the film where, things didn't really pan out the way you guys wanted to when it came to like working with the production team, or, even when after they hired you, whether it's negotiations or whether it's just a taste disagreement or whatnot, it's been pretty smooth sailing once you're on board.
I mean, I have to say, I think I'm a super adaptable person. So is Lorenzo. We're both like kind of global citizens. The difficulty is never, well, maybe not never, is usually not like a problem with the way I work or Lorenzo works versus the way the company works. It's often a question of trying to merge, try to be a bridge between, for example, like a UK agent and a European
Mm,
production, because the way that they think, the way they act, the way that everything is, goes forward is completely different. And unless you know uh how, like, it's like everybody makes assumptions about the way that the other person works. And so unless you kind of like strategically try to um go in front of that and like like fix it beforehand or kind of troubleshoot, that's when things get into a really big, because people get offended over something that's not really an offense. It's just a different way of working, or yeah, people will get blindsided. So I do a lot of telling people how other people are going to behave. And then oddly, they don't believe it until it happens. And then they're like, oh God, okay, I see, but this is like a constant,
Yeah. The
a
main strong
constant,
side that we know
yeah,
these
a constant
different
issue.
cultures, British, American, German, Italian, and and outside of these countries.
Uh, you have to be
That's
like
another
a
one.
United Nations, like you have to be like a diplomat,
I
to
I
manage
I
the
I
cultural
couldn't agree.
expectations.
I couldn't agree with you more because I remember for one of the films when I was trying to sell it that I directed, Citizen of Moria, about Afghan refugee, and my approach to people in the US and Canada was exactly the same as people in Europe. And long after I realized that, and I always knew this, but in that process you forget that people in North America, especially in America, are more blunt and straightforward.
Yeah.
Like, so am I. Europe, it's a completely different world. Like people
Yeah.
are walking on eggshells. I don't know what it is. A lot of people get offended very, very quickly. Am I correct to assess that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even between European countries, if you're, I mean, we do a lot of like Italy, Germany mixing, and it's like it's just really, really hard. So Lorenzo's like the king of that also because he grew up with, all these different cultures and he speaks the languages. And so and I kind of am more maybe like UK, US translation. It's like it's really, really a big part of what we do.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you guys. You talked about Ethan Hawke and Russell Crowe's next film. What's it called? Is there a title out for that yet? Or
It's
you're
called
not?
the Wait. The Wait. Yeah, it's out. It's
Wait.
been announced. Yeah.
And is it already in production?
We finished. They finished. We went up to see. We went up to set for that one. They finished
Edited.
like a month ago. Yeah, they're edited. It's in post now.
Okay, okay. And what's that about premise-wise, just for the audience?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll just say what's in the news with us in the trade magazines. It's set in 1930s, during the Great Depression in Oregon.
Mm,
And they shot the whole thing here in Germany.
because of tax credits, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
think
was
they
gonna say,
tried a couple places, yeah, to do it, and it's worked out really well here.
I was gonna say Oregon is such a beautiful state. The Goonies was shot there and it was set
Yeah,
there,
it's
right?
beautiful.
And
It's crazy though, because like, I mean, of course, I grew up in San Diego, but I used to go to the Pacific Northwest a lot. And I went into some of these forests in Bayern in Bavaria, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like these huge tall trees. I mean, it looks just like it. So they managed to find everything really well here, and they shot here in around Munich, and then
nice, nice.
up in Bavaria. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I loved our director. I loved everything, our producers. I loved the movie or the whole cast. Yeah, I love everything about it. I can't wait to see it.
Who directed this?
His name's Pat, you know what? His name is so hard to pronounce, so I call him Pat.
Okay,
But
okay.
it's
I'll look it up.
yeah, Padraic McKinley, Patrick McKinley. But it's an Irish name, so it's Padraic.
It sounds familiar. I may have seen some of his
He's a
films.
really, really well-known editor. This is and he's done TV, he's directed TV, and this is his feature film debut. And I mean, he was a dream. He was a dream for me to work with. He was a dream for the cast. He's just absolutely fantastic. His whole vision about it and everything. He developed it, for a long time, and the script and the project. And he's just, yeah,
Yeah, everyone was great. The producers, I mean, of
oh,
course,
fantastic. We loved that. Love that movie. Yeah.
great.
Is there a director or a type of film, genre-wise or location-wise, that you haven't done that you would want to do?
Oh, interesting. Um,
I know normally that question is asked from a editor or a producer,
yeah,
an
yeah,
actor, but
sure.
still, I'm sure there's something.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Hmm. I is there something that I don't know. I gotta say we're so lucky because we
Being
get to
here, you
do,
haven't done a fully American project, but because
Well, technically the wait was fully American. I mean, it was shot here, but it was an
yeah, but
American
we had
project.
actors that also came from Europe. But I mean, you have full
Yeah.
American cast, of course, doesn't make much
Yeah.
sense here. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't think it's impossible. And I did stuff earlier by, at the beginning, but I mean, I gotta just have a moment and say, like, I feel like we're really blessed because I don't think there's anything. I mean, of course, every time you get a new exciting project and it's got, a certain director or just, somebody you've always wanted to work with, then yeah, fantastic. But I mean, uh, we're just we do everything. I mean, we do a lot of streaming. We do German language. We do Italian language. We do small art house films. We do big. We've done big budget projects. We do series, and so we're really, really, really blessed that we have a wide variety of projects. I feel very. I mean, we've worked out of Poland, Middle East. We just did a Turkish movie. Um, so yeah, it's fun. It's cool. I don't know that I have any. I mean, of course, always bigger, better projects, always great,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but I also I love, everything we get to do is fantastic. Maybe that's a stupid answer, but
No, 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 it's not a stupid answer.
I have
I
no
th
more dreams.
I think I think what happens is that, when we're growing up, we all have these wild ambition ideas and goals, which is great. It's fantastic. We should. But I think as we go later in life, if that comes, it's great.
Yeah,
If it doesn't come, we're still happy with where we are,
enjoy
right?
the
yeah,
So,
process
yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
yeah,
Enjoy the
yeah.
process. That's the key.
Enjoy the process. Enjoy the
Yeah,
journey. Yeah.
yeah. You mentioned Turkish. Turkish TV is actually pretty big. Netflix has been doing a lot of Turkish shows, and they're very high-end production and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
the project I did was that's coming out on Friday actually.
Tomorrow,
It's yeah, tomorrow. It's yeah, that was a
Netflix.
Turkish, yeah, Netflix Turkey and Netflix Germany. So it's largely German language with some Turkish language, but they shot the whole thing in Istanbul.
You said maybe.
She said
mm.
maybe it's called, yeah.
Nice. And anything else that you want to add when it comes to films or casting? Anybody who wants to get into casting. I mean, I always feel that casting is almost like kind of like a pre-director job. Obviously, you're trying to find the roles and the actors that fit. There's sometimes you don't get the actors through casting process because the director wants somebody and they go to them. But yeah, any words
Well,
of wisdom?
yeah, I mean, one thing I always say is just the work that I do for CSA for Casting Society and the global chapter. I'm the president of the global chapter, and what we're trying to do is keep like ecosystems healthy in especially in places where sort of there's this like emerging market feel to it or where the all the infrastructure that we take for granted in North America and the UK. So, for example, there are many, many, many places, unfortunately, where casting directors are, where casting is given to agents to carry out, to talent agents. So the person that's like doing the casting and should be have fiduciary and creative responsibility to the producer to have the widest net possible is actually someone who gains financially by hiring their own clients and then getting a percentage of every every fee. So that is way more common than anybody would hope. There are many countries where the casting directors that I talk to in that country can barely survive because it's cheaper for the production to hire an agent to cast because they have to pay the commission anyway, and then they're paying just the commission. And then what happens that's really, really corrupt and terrible is that casting, it's not a casting director, it's a casting agent. That's what they're called, casting agents. And they then really control the environment. And so the whole ecosystem. So for example, they'll charge actors to be in their database. So therefore, like under their, to be in the casting pool, they will charge them for photos. They'll charge them a yearly fee. They'll charge them for, 100 euros per clip on their show reel. And so it's very like it becomes this sort of semi like mafia kind of
Yeah, yeah.
situation, and it's really, really, really bad. So we're doing outreach. I was just in Kosovo last weekend talking about this. I'm going to Egypt. I'm going to Japan. And we're doing like a whole thing in all over Europe, because in some parts of Europe it's still very common. And there are even I think more and more and more ways that people figure out to take advantage of sort of the hope of actors and get them to pay for, they charge $10 a submission, and you don't even know what are you paying for. They're paying, there's like subscription program. There's like, they're doing acting training, but kind of under the guise of casting. And so it's really just, I see it getting worse and worse and worse. And my goal is always, as when I go out and talk about this, is to try to encourage people have like that a clean casting ecosystem benefits everybody. I know it might be slightly more expensive, but if you have a casting director who has no conflict of interest, your film is just going to be so much better, or your series or your television
Yeah.
show. And so that's a major, it's a huge part of the mission of our global chapter of CSA. And it's something that I spend a lot of time and energy trying to, to keep
And you
it
protect the actors, giving every actor a chance
protect the
to.
actors. Yeah, free access. I mean, of course there's whatever, you might have to pay some, for just like some database, but it's like it can't be a thing where there's this like pay for access systems that are going on, and they are rampant around the world.
Yeah. No, I agree. Agents are so, I don't even want to use the right word, but they're difficult to deal with, is what I will say. We sent out emails to based for the project that we talked about. We sent out emails to Javier Bardem's publicist, Mark Ruffalo, Susan Sarandon, because they're very vocal about the topic. And each and every time the publicist, like, we're going to direct you to the agent. And then I know
Yeah,
once it goes to the agent, it's not going anywhere. And because they all care about the buck, unless they see a buck or a value in it, they're not gonna give a damn about it. But so I completely agree with you. Like the agents, majority of the agents, even Hollywood stars say it in their jokes and Golden Globes or Oscars, they make fun of them because it's all a sham now. Art is dying and business and money and money.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's probably like in the traditional Hollywood sense, that is true. But I
That's what I'm
mean,
referring to. I don't know
yeah,
anything about it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like UK agents are so great. They read, they're really looking out for their clients. They're about developing their careers, and they, advise them often to do like smaller, more artistic projects, and then a bigger, to kind of balance everything out. And they're really transparent and really, and same thing with European, mostly in Europe. So, and I mean, I also understand, their problem, which is those actors that are kind of bankable and have a lot of, power in the industry. They're also just like inundated with so many offers and so many people. So they have to find a way to kind of filter through everything. And I think, it's been like pay or play offers has been kind of the way that they can, filter out what might not happen or what has a large chance of not happening. And I understand that they need to do that. I think it's changing a bit now because there's more of a, people are more, I think, willing now, or I find the agents more willing to discuss projects when they're still in development than they used to be maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Um, but, um, but yeah, I understand it. And if I had to do that job, I would probably, unfortunately be similar
No,
because
There's no conflict of interest. I mean, an actor should be represented by,
yeah,
yeah,
I agree
someone.
with you guys, but I think what I'm trying to say is that look, I get it. Like, everybody has their own interest in what they want to pursue. I totally get that. I would do the same. You guys would do the same. But I think what differs in Europe versus North America, especially in Hollywood, is that a simple reply, whether not interested or interested,
yeah,
would
yeah,
do. Just like 2 words. That's all you need to do.
yeah,
So
yeah,
nobody's
I know.
nobody's like patronizing you or pushing you and stuff. And you're
Yeah.
right. Whenever I've reached out to people in Europe, or we have reached out to Europe for a podcast, the agents are so quick to respond and so polite, and it's like as if they know you in the email. Like that's how
Yeah.
their tone is. And
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
US and in North America, it's like to the point, most of it, not all of it, and
Yeah.
um, it's just a different culture, like you said.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Anything you want to add, Lorenzo?
No, no, I mean,
He
She
has
is.
good relationships with agents. You have good
yeah,
relationships with
no,
agents. Yeah. He's
representation.
got his own, it's like, he's got his like agents that he's got sort of a shorthand with, and I have agents that I have a
Well,
shorthand
because
with.
we
And
notice also, I think everyone, that is working in the arts, if you're a casting director, if you're an actor, you want, when you deal with your client, let's say for both is actually the producer, you want someone in between because you're involved. You want to, let's say, casting director, you want to work with a director, and the project is interesting, the person is interesting, so you're also artistically involved, and you or the actor or the DP shouldn't. It's hard if you also have to deal like about the contract, about the financial part with this same person. So that's why the producer or the director should be have someone in between dealing with these things, and a casting director or an agent or an actor should only have to talk to the director or the producer about the role, about how to
yeah.
play the role, and
And
the
it's very different from market to market. That's why I have three, actually. I have an American, UK, and German
an
because
agent
it's
communicates and lets you know some response.
because it's yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's very different
it's a good
in
filter
every
to
place.
the
So
best, in a positive way, interest of the actor, of anyone involved. So, but in our case, what we were saying before is the problem is when there's a conflict of interest. But a pure agent, if he's working well, is good. But they should also look at the quality of the project that's being offered, and not just look at the buck and not filter out anything that he.
Yeah.
Very actually, one I can add one thing is interesting. Sometimes when we know the actor, a few times we kind of contacted directly the actor because we knew that the actor could have been interested, like in the story, to get at least to read the screenplay. And in that specific case, of course, we won't say who it is. Maybe that we know that specific agent was, filtering too hard and making an actor in this case miss out on something that we knew that the actor was interested, because in that case we could
Yeah.
regret. It's very complex, but
And then that's what I meant, right? Like it's
yeah,
again it's I'm not assuming anything. It's like why would somebody do that? Is it because of financial motives or some other motives? Who knows? But I've seen a lot of interviews of actors who would say that, I was supposed to
you
get this
complain.
role. Yeah, then the agent didn't do it and I fired the agent. I don't know if you've seen the
yeah,
show, Apple TV show, The Studio, which was
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
hmm
I mean, that's a true depiction
yeah,
of Hollywood, right? And they know there is a problem, but it's just one of those things where you don't know how to get around it. And I'm
yeah.
not saying everybody's like that, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's a major
Yeah, yeah,
problem.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know a director that had a quite known actress come up to him at the premiere and say, "Oh my, that was such a great role. I would have loved to play that role." And he said, "Well, we offered it to you first. So I'm sorry you never got it." Yeah.
And the agent probably never told her. Yeah. Whatever the reason was, we don't know, right? So, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for taking the time to chat. It was lovely conversing with you and learning a little bit about casting process and your work in Samia. A great film. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to your next film.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
us too.